As men, we have a lot of work to do around our sexual identity and our conceptions of sex. And we have generations and generations of broken archetypes that are persisting, and they're creating, like violent trauma for women, and like generations of like physical unsafety and problematic thinking and all this stuff. And so I feel like as men, we have to understand our sexual impulses, we have to understand our relationship to women and in that regard. And I feel like that's where a lot of the really powerful work is done, because it's where a lot of our shame lives, is around our sexual being and our sexual identity.
Welcome back to Bathtime with Kiley Mac. I'm so excited about today's guest, Mr. Stevie Ray. Stevie has become a dear brother of mine over the last few years. He's someone who's just so dedicated on his path, not only with music, but also just with who he is as a man and as a person. His mindfulness, the practices he does, I'm just so excited to dive in today and peel out some of these secrets and practices. You're constantly inspiring me, so I hope that this episode will inspire you as well to just live a little brighter and a little more in your authentic truth. So thanks so much for being here today. I love you. So fun.
Much. Yeah, this is gonna be fun.
Yeah, we also live together now, so it's extra fun. We've got to know each other a little bit deeper than just
for sure
how we had in the past.
We had the instant soul tribe thing when we met, but I think we only kicked it 3 times actually before I moved in here. So definitely a whole new depth to the relationship now that we have this much time.
Totally. And it's crazy how the times we did hang out, it was deep doing healing work, or deep doing freestyle work, or just chatting, hearing what each other's been up to. And our mutual friend Lily is how we know each other. And so it's just when you meet someone through a friend, there's already more of that you're already friends energy. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Yeah.
Doing well?
Yeah, I've been super energized the last few days, which has been wonderful, but it's been hard to sleep, so I was up till 6:30 last night.
And you're here?
Yeah.
No.
So I'm tired, but I'm moving. I got a lot. Yeah, I'm kind of glad I have a busy day today, because then I can just push through and crash hard tonight.
Yeah, blast through it and actually sleep.
Yeah.
Exactly. I know Janelle was up super late. I've been up super late. Chelsea, you were up super late last night. So something's in the air. Yeah. I think we're all riding that wave of and then pushing through, And it's been kind of gray the last few days, which I think also makes me just want to be more in my sweats, cocooning. And then you're not doing much during the day, so by nighttime you're wait, I'm exhausted. But not. Well, I'm so happy you're here. Yeah, Stevie, you personally have been a big inspiration for me on so many levels. One, to just continue to grow in your craft, especially with hip hop. But I think what is your biggest craft is you've just continued to refine your own soul over and over and over. I've watched you go through, even just in the short time I've known you, a few little metamorphoses, you know, of really being no, this is what I want for me and for my life, and I'm gonna not stop till I get it or create it or make it or figure it out. And in doing that, it's hard because people you love kind of fall away, or projects fall away, or a lot of things can happen, a lot of speed bumps on the path, and there's something about your consistency of going to your journal, really doing your practices. And we're not all perfect, but I see you working out, and I see you just staying really true to what matters to you. And about a month ago, I was going to Death Valley, and I was kind of going through a lot of emotional things, and I was man, I really want to journal. And last minute I was who's a writer in this house? And I was Stevie. I run in his room. I was do you have a journal? You're no. And then you're wait, maybe. And then you dug through your stuff late at night, I'm pretty sure, and found me not only 1 but 2 journals. You're here's one to write in, here's one to color in, here's some colored pencils, go. And I cannot tell you how much that's meant to me, because I haven't been on a journaling frenzy in probably years. Yeah. And I cannot stop writing in this journal.
I love it.
And so thank you just for my own personal, journey of inspiring that.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy how much a journal can change your life, I have my cousin, my mom, I have a handful of people that regularly gift me journals for birthdays or Christmas or whatever. And it's just crazy sometimes, like, you know, they just give you a notebook and then I'll look back and I'll be like I remember my mom gave me this little black notebook that, like, the little black book changed my life. You know what I mean? I made a whole album in that book. I like did a full upcycle as a human being in that book, and I hold on to it. And like whenever I see it, I'm just like, this is such a representation of like a giant portion of my growth. So it's like a journal can be such a powerful gift.
Such a powerful gift. Wow. And that's how I'm feeling with mine. I'm like, I'm watching my own journey unfold and like what I'm calling in, what I'm letting go of. And it's been like this deep medicine of like dedication to self.
Sure.
And like my own mental health and like my own emotional health of like really being like, oof, like riding through everything. Like, you know, and I would love to know, like, if we can peek behind the curtain a little bit of what is kind of your practice? Like in your practice, do you just flow? Do you have like gratitude? Like what is, I mean, I'm sure you do a lot of things, but do you have like kind of a practice with it in particular, or what's your relationship with it? It's really dope.
Thank you. I think the journal for me is like a place to show up for myself. Like it's a place for me to sit down and talk about stuff and figure stuff out, you know? And I think sometimes that's to-do lists or goals or tasks or calling in manifestations. Sometimes it's, you know, trying to like exercise trauma and purge stuff. Sometimes it's like holding myself accountable, like kind of having to come and be like, hey man, you're really letting it slide and I really need you to step up and like be strong and to like honor your word. But I think the biggest thing is it's a space where I have dialogue between me and me, you know, where I can say, you know, like, hey, you've been working super hard and you show up for me every day and I appreciate that. Or like sometimes I do it the other way, from like almost like my body or like my meta self to like my, like, I'll be like, hey, I like show up every day and I like digest your food and I breathe your oxygen and I pump your blood and I fucking, like I'm holding up my end of the bargain and like you're giving me shitty food and you're not giving me rest and you're not giving me time and like I need those things from you. Like I'm doing my, you know, and so it's just this place where we can, like me and me can hash stuff out. And it's just like, it's kind of been like, it's allowed me to develop my relationship with myself. And then that's a place where whatever needs to get right with me, we can just work on it.
Dang, I love that. The me and me part. And that's like a cool invitation. If you do have a journaling practice, like, are you talking to yourself? Because sometimes we just kind of like vent or do gratitude, but like, are you really like kind of nourishing your soul? Like those questions that you're asking, or, you know, like the me and me conversation is a really cool invitation. I'm definitely going to try that.
Yeah.
You know, thank you. I really appreciate that. Now, when you like, have you always had this practice, or like as a kid, did you journal and stuff, or was that like more in your adult life, or like? I'm
trying to think. I did journal, like I always had a notebook. A lot of times it would be like to draw in or to write lyrics in or whatever. So like my relationship with the journal has developed a lot into this one, and it's constantly like moving and changing. But I think maybe like 6 years ago, I remember, I think in 2015, I remember like getting a journal and then like journaling in it every day. And like from that point on, like I've never not had an active journal. You know, It's just been like a part of me. And like I have like stacks of them. And that's why I bring that little Ninja Turtle backpack everywhere. Like I always have it on and everyone knows me for having that thing on. I actually had a funny experience. I was in Portland on tour and I played like a club spot. Like we did a normal concert and then afterwards they had me come do like 4 songs at this like nightclub, and I was wearing the backpack and the promoter was like, man, like I've seen you 4 times and every time you're like out at a party and you have that backpack on, like what's in there? Like why do you need your backpack? And I was just like, oh yeah, like I just keep it on me always, because even if I'm not going to write in it, like I just have it, you know, like it's just close to me because I put so much in it, like so much. So it's like for me, it's nice to physically have it close. It's like a reminder, like everywhere I go, I'm carrying like all of my manifestations and all my self-work and all my values, like on my back, literally everywhere I go. So.
As like a real life Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, because it's like your shell.
Yeah.
Your home wherever you go. I love it.
Yeah, but yeah, the last like 5-6 years is when I've had like a really like steady relationship with the journal.
So cool. Would you ever like bring it into like a lot of our friends in the communities do like men's groups, or like I know that you and your friend Chris do like cool like book club vibe. Mm-hmm. Like, is that something that you would ever like bring into one of those spaces? I just feel like it'd be so necessary for all people, but especially for dudes, because I feel like if I was a guy, like I would feel like growing up, I really only got to let my emotions out through like either like sports or like maybe that's it. Mm-hmm. Like, unless you had like a dope friend, or you're just like
exercise, or even like for a lot of men, it's like physical confrontation.
Yeah,
you know?
That's what I mean. Like,
but it's usually physical, material outlets. Yeah.
Yeah, and like with sports, it's cool because you can like cry if your team loses, or celebrate if your team loses, or slap each other's butts, or like talk about stuff in the locker room, or like you know. But outside of that, I don't know. Like, I don't know if a lot of guys have like that emotional support. So I think it'd be so cool to like just even share that practice. Be like, yo, here's like a key in a way, like for you to like have a journal. I don't know, because I know a lot of dudes who draw or who write lyrics or like, you know, will put, but not like talk to the me and me. Yeah. That I know of. Yeah. A few that do. I'm not writing out everyone, but it's just like, how cool would that be if all people, women included too, but you being a dude having that opportunity to maybe open that conversation up. Totally. Like, has that ever...
Yeah. I mean, like, I think you're definitely right. And it's like that ability to have like transparent and emotional conversation for men is like oftentimes lacking.
Has been, hopefully it's shifting. I think,
Totally. My perspective is a little warped because like I roll with Jedi, so like my crew is sick, you know? We do that stuff. But
same with most of the men I know.
And that's another reason that I'm like super grateful to like political study and these like book groups that you've mentioned, because like, you know, I like am in a bunch of reading groups with a bunch of like men and women who will study, you know, feminist literature and intersectional literature, and like we kind of have an agreement in those spaces that we hold each other accountable to those, you know, like to like not only purging like, you know, I mean, because if you look at like America, like it's built on white supremacy, patriarchy, and classism or capitalism, you know what I mean? So and homophobia. So it's like there are these patriarchal rigid gender norms that we socialize underneath. That's how we develop, you know? And so to just like live or like have spaces to go where everyone is aware that these are problems that we're trying to fix and that we're going to hold each other to like a new set of standards has been really helpful. And it's been like a huge part of my like relearning my masculinity and my manhood.
Dude, so important and so inspiring. Like, just to have like dudes talking about this stuff is just like such an inspiration for like truly where the world is going, and like gives me so much hope. And I think so many women hope. Like, Stevie's the kind of guy that like if someone in the house, and we're mainly women in the house, so if someone's having like literally an emotional breakdown or is like crying or screaming or sad or like something's happening, like while most dudes would be like, oh, close the door, like ignore, like Stevie's like the first one in there with his freaking cape on energetically, and it's just like they're holding space, and he's like, I'm sorry, I hear you, what do you need? And just watching you do that for so many people that we live with has just been like, you're such a safe space. Like, when I say brother, like you truly are that emphasis of like an actual brother. Like, you show up, you have clean sexual energy, you know, like you honor the women in your life that you are romantic with, and like, but you still show up in such a loving and tender way. And like, you're such a safe space. And like, I just think your cultivation of your mind expanding and of like creating what your manhood means to you creates like that mindfulness of like how you weave in the world. It's not just, it goes from your journal but beyond, like it starts there so you get clear on things, but then like it just like emanates from you, and like that's who you are and who you become. And I can't imagine like if you didn't have that practice the last 6-7 years, like you might just still be like spinning in certain pools of your own stuff, right? So it feels like it's been a huge catalyst.
I mean, it's one of many. I think to your point, like like everything is connected, you know what I mean? Everything that we do. And so whether it's, you know what I mean, like, because you could journal all day, but if you don't practice, if you don't implement the changes, and even then like the stuff that happens in the journal, it comes from the world and us living in the world, you know? So like before the journal even happens, you have to be looking at the world in a certain way and be open to receive the information that you can then synthesize in the journal, that then you can then turn into the practices. And then that's going to create new experiences in the world, and you get, you know what I mean? So there's always work to be done. And I'm very fortunate that, like, I'm just so grateful for books. Like, all the smartest people in the world wrote all the smartest shit in books, and we can just read it. Like, we don't have to, you know what I mean? Like, they're just like, yo, here's 40 years of learning. You can just download it now. You can skip hella steps. And so just like honoring my predecessors and just like looking, you know what I mean? There's so many people who we get to stand on their shoulders. Yeah. You know what I mean? We get to start from where they finished.
Wow.
And so it's just like, I think that's been the greatest thing. It's just like, there's so many great philosophers and revolutionaries and, you know, like brave people that have taken risks so that we don't have to. And so I kind of feel like a sense of obligation to download as much of the information as is available and then take that and run with it and hopefully be the next person to do that, so that in the future we can pass the baton off further than where we got it.
Wow. And like building on that. Do you, just off the top of your head, like what are your top like few books that have really impacted you in the most recent years, or like maybe your life? Just a few, and then maybe we could do a link of like, you know, some of the books in your book club or something in the description. Yeah. But just like,
I would love that. Right. Yeah. I think Hegel's Science of Logic has really changed my worldview.
Wow.
I'm reading right now a book called Feminist Theory from Margin to Center by Bell Hooks. That's fantastic. That's really shifted my perspective. I read the Dalai Lama's little book of Inner Peace, and I had a really deep relationship with that book. And then there's a book called Creative Visualization. That was another book that I had a really profound relationship with as far as creating with the mind.
I think you had told me about that one.
I've probably given out like 150 copies of that book. I used to roll with just like 10 of them in that Ninja Turtle backpack, and if I would like meet someone, I'd just be like, have this. You know, it was just like a vibe. If I was like, oh, this is a fertile piece of soil, I'll just like plant a little seed in it, you know?
Dude, I love you. What the heck? Oh, when it comes to like, and I don't mean to be like, you're a man and you're mindful, so you have things figured out. But like, I think it's cool to just like, as kids, as girls, as boys, like it's cool to have a template of, you know, different people and role models that we can go to that have been doing the work and who continue to want to like be the best version of themselves. And like, you know, it's something that our friend BC always talks about is like, who are you taking advice from? Are you taking advice from someone who like has a life that you actually want to live like? Or are you just taking advice from someone because they're just like
telling you what you want to hear?
Exactly. And so I love that piece. And I feel like you're someone who's like living the walk and humble enough to figure it out. And also like you mess with enough like humility in your life to be like, yo, I'm figuring it out.
Yeah.
You know, and like, it's just really powerful practice.
So I'll turn around so that we can.
No, enjoy your bath. Either way, we can be.
I just had a dip for a second. But no, conversation is better with presence. Yeah, I think humility is super important. Like, if you want to grow, you have to admit that you need to grow. Like, that's the first step, is acknowledging that there's work to be done. And I think in the beginning, that can be really scary, because I think a lot of times we think we have to relinquish our confidence. Yeah. You know, we have to like, oh, I'm weak. I'm lesser. I'm like broken. I need fixing. But for me, there's a new confidence if you think that you have it all figured out and you need to have that in order to maintain your confidence, you have a false confidence, which is usually a loud confidence and like an egoic or like a hurtful or like a hard confidence. But if you like, I have a new type of confidence now where I know that I haven't figured it all out yet, but I know that I will. Like, I've proven to myself over and over and over again that when I get to the next block, I'm going to overcome it. So the confidence doesn't come from being done. It's just a confidence that I'll be fine in the process. And that to me is just like, But yeah, I mean, to just like have, I don't know, there's like so many smart, brilliant people out there, and the world is so big, and we're so small, and we're here for such a little amount of time, and like, it's just, I remember one time I was going on a hike with some friends, and we were around a bunch of redwood trees that are like 800 years old, you know, and they're, I don't even know, 200, 500 feet, I don't even know how tall they are, but like so high up in the air. And I remember just thinking, like, everything around me is going to be here for hundreds of years after I die. And the most I could ever see was like, you know, 5.5 feet off the ground, like right here. This is the like they get 100 plus, you know, hundreds more years with that much more perspective. Like, and I'm sitting here thinking I know shit, you know?
That's cute, honey. Yeah, exactly.
And so, yeah, I don't know. I think, to me, that's the most exciting thing in the world. Is getting to learn new shit, getting to grow, like getting to be a better, doper version of yourself. Like, why would anyone not want that?
Right? Yeah, dude. And that reminds me, like, the other day you and I were talking about how, like, because we've both been in some, like, crazy tidal waves and, like, waves in our life, like, even just the last few months, right? And, like, both navigating through some, like, heavy stuff. And part of it's like, yo, we've been here before, so this could be expedited, you know? So, like, and like some of this I haven't been here before, so I'm like stoked to learn and grow in this, but it's still sticky and painful, whatever. Course, yeah. But something we talked about was like, dang, like with the things that we've already gone through, it's like, man, this kind of stuff used to derail me for like months, even like a year. And now I'm expediting that process because of my practices and having done the work. And now it's like a 1 to 3 day purge or experience of that. And then next thing you're like, oh, I'm good.
Yeah.
And it's like, woof. And I think that's what makes it worth it. Like each time you go through something, it's almost like the process gets expedited, not because you're rushing through it, but because it's almost like your muscle memory is there with you, right? It's like,
yeah, I mean, like when you first get like a new job, right? Like all the like little tasks, like, you know, like, I don't know, like changing, making the coffee or whatever, like stacking the things the way they're supposed to go. Like, you're like, how does it go? Like, and then like, you know, you work that job for 2 years and you're like, I'm out, you know, like it's just, these things become second nature. That's what practice and repetition is all about.
It's so cool. Before we get into music, which I really want to geek out on and spend a good chunk of time on, when I think about, you know, just the mindfulness practices and who you are as like a man, like, and who you've continued to choose yourself and create and those building blocks into who you surround yourself with, you know, the things you think, the space that you allow yourself to live in, like the frequency of the life that you like allow to be around you. You know, what are some of the other practices besides journaling and reading? And, you know, do you have any other practices that, even if it is music or if it is, you know, being in nature or meditating, like what are some of those other, you know, tools in your tool belt that you're using?
Yeah.
Because you already got a lot out there, but I'm just wondering if there's anything we haven't.
Yeah, I mean, therapy like has been a huge tool for me.
Like talk therapy?
I've had the same therapist for like 1.5 years now. We've done some really righteous work.
How often do you meet with them?
Weekly.
So once a week?
Yeah.
For 1.5 years?
Yeah.
Let's go, baby.
Yeah, that's her and I have like done some really gangster work together. Like, it's just really been, I'm so grateful for her and the time that we've spent. And I think just like being, studying has been a huge part of it. Organizing within community, and then also like engaging in all of my relationships with women with like intention and like an eagerness to learn, you know, like coming into this house, I was like, I'm going to get to see and like, you know, and I'm fortunate that like you guys have trusted me and privileged me with like, you know, like a really unfiltered look at you guys' experience and just trying to meet that with like curiosity and intention. Exercise has really helped me a lot because I think there's an element of like learning as men to like both accept and then engage with our femininity, and to like, I think we're conditioned to like reject that, to feel shame around it. And it's like, you know, there's all of these like, you know what I mean? Like, don't be a bitch, don't be a pussy. Like there's all these like homophobic, patriarchal, like gendered things that we're growing up, like as a boy becoming a man, those are like the worst things that you can be, you know? And so we've internalized all the shame. And so there's this element of like learning to look at your femininity, embrace it and discover it and learn about it. But then there's also like another element that for me has been really important as far as balance is like, just like honoring my masculinity as well and learning like I am a man and I do have testosterone and I do like to like, like punch stuff and move heavy things and like yell and compete and to like play rough and to feel powerful and all of those things. And so just like learning, I feel like as you unlearn the toxic elements, then you can kind of reclaim your masculinity in a way that's safe for women and safe for the world and safe for ourselves too. But like, I feel like sometimes men feel like they're at like feminism is like trying to like neuter them or something. And it's like, dude, come on, no, just don't be a prick. Just be safe, like that's like such an important thing. So, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's the most gangster stuff ever. Is like being in a safe space within yourself and then showing up from that space with everyone, elders, people of other genders or identities, ages, totally. And like being able to show up in those spaces and not having like that high and mighty or like, I know what your experience is, but like, hey, I'm curious. Like you said that word a lot. And like being curious is like that medicine. I think that's how you philosophize your life is like, seeing life more through theory and philosophy and like what's really going on, the bigger pictures, like looking more from the redwood perspective than from like, your human perspective that can only see so far.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important to be able to kaleidoscope to either perspective.
Because for real.
The feet on the ground perspective is super valid and super real. Sure. And a lot of people's firsthand experiences aren't getting validated, aren't getting heard. And so we can't like get so caught up in analysis that we forget that we're people, but you also can't get so caught up in being a person that you forget to look at the systems and understand what's going on.
Thank you.
And I think the other big thing, which is like taboo to talk about and really like hard for, I feel like a lot of men and women to talk about together as far as like healing patriarchy and like toxic masculinity is like, as men, we have a lot of work to do around our sexual identity and our conceptions of sex. And from such an early age, like we ingest all this media we have generations and generations of broken archetypes that are persisting, and they're creating, like violent trauma for women and like generations of, like unsafe physical unsafety and problematic thinking and all this stuff. And so I feel like as men, like we have to understand our sexual impulses. We have to understand our relationship to women and in that regard. And I feel like that's where a lot of the like really powerful work is done, because it's where a lot of our shame lives, is around our like sexual being and our sexual identity. So I think that's it. And it's such a fucking deep dark onion to start pulling the layers off of. It's really hard for a lot of people,
Totally. And like, where do they start?
Totally.
Yeah. Well, I love that you started talking about this, because this was the next thing I was going to ask you and kind of share is like, I've watched you navigate romantic relationships really beautifully. And like you bring in a lot of clarity, a lot of communication, a lot of balance. Like you've stretched what most people understand as like what can be a romantic relationship in a lot of ways. And even though you and I live in different realms where we're like definitely pushing those edges and kind of creating our own life with those things, it's like you on a whole, like just the way you are so clear with your partner or partners, depending on where you're at, and just like the clarity and the honesty that you give, like I think that is also stepping in from like that like man-child to being a man fully. And no one's right or wrong. If you're a man-child, rock it. That's where you're at, epic.
But we need you to level up. Come on, guys.
I mean, that would be nice.
Yeah. No, we love you. You're valid, but also like collectively. And that starts with me. We got to tighten up every second of every day, because we're not doing right by you guys.
Thank you for saying that. It hits the point right now. I love you. I love you and appreciate you. But what I just meant to finish with that is just, like you're allowed to be in wherever you're at, but there's a special place where you can start asking for what you want and really clarifying it, rather than just like dropping the ball or just what people call ghosting or lying and staying in something where you're not being what you say you are. And like, I know as a woman, most of my friends and I are at a place where we're like, yo, like we've been so washing machine and all over the place from our own choices and from different like men embodied people we've been with, to the point where it's like, yo, you can't do any wrong as long as you're honest. Like you could kill someone, you could hook up with a bunch of women. Like I wouldn't be like hyped on that, but like, well, it depends on like where we're at in that space. But like, if you're honest, then like we can work with that. And a lot of guys, I think, see it as like, oh, but that's just like, then I'll get in trouble or, and so it's been amazing when there are guys who step into that more like male, like I'm a man direction. They're like, yo, like this went down. This is how I'm feeling about it. Like I just wanted to update you. And like, this is where I'm at. And then I'm like, oh, thank you. Because now I know how much of my own heart energy and emotion and spirit to like invest or pour into this space.
Yeah.
And when you don't have that, then you start feeling like, am I crazy? What's really going on? I feel something's up, because unfortunately or fortunately, women, I don't know if it's because we have babies or what, but we're highly intuitive beings. Like we feel so much. So when we don't have words to go with those feelings, it can create all kinds of different like rumbles and rattles. And then we start feeling crazy. And then eventually when that pimple pops or that volcano erupts of like that truth comes out, we're like, oh, thank God. Like I don't even care what the answer is. I'm just happy that I'm not that crazy. Like, that there was something. That I'm not just like making this up in my head. So no, I think like I'm watching you navigate through some really dope relationships and being with cool women, like to watch you show up and be really clear and like updating them even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Totally. Is like where I go, damn, Stevie's like a man. You're a gangster and a sick dude and a brother and all these things, but like you are like setting that bar for a lot of the women in your life who are sisters, being like, yo, like Stevie exists, like that bar is set now. Like Dean exists, okay, that bar is set now. Like there's certain people, Louis is a man, that bar is set. Like there's certain men in our life we kind of go to as templates, and we're like, cool, now the bar is set.
Oh, that's such
so maybe that's men win. That's
such a beautiful compliment. That's super grateful. I think a lot of that honesty too, in my experience, really circles back to what I was just talking about as far as like repurposing my relationship with my own sexuality and like ridding a lot of that shame, because like for years and like, for the past few years, like I've had my own understanding of like polyamorous love as like a non-possessive and free love. And to me, like, I think like the truest form, and not that like no value judgment on it. Everyone should love however they want. But for me, like it's built into that arrangement that there is like detachment and honoring of people as like independent being, and that there's no ownership or that there's no codependence. And
hopefully communication and honesty as you're like balancing all these people.
It's necessary when you're like in that sort of anarchist fluid space, because you have to know what's up. You know? Whereas like that's the benefit a lot of times to like committed monogamy, is like you set the parameters and then that conversation is done. We are boyfriend and girlfriend. We don't date other people. Like all these rules are just like, we don't have to think about that anymore. And that serves a great function for a lot of people. That's what people want, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, it's been like knowing that I want to feel free to explore the world however I see fit, and not just from a selfish perspective, but that I want my partners to have the same opportunities. And I was talking to Charlie on the beach the other day, and she's like, does it make you like worried when you think about like when your partner's having sex with somebody else or having eyes for somebody else? And I was like, well, no, because like, if you met somebody who was rocking your world and they made you feel super valid and on top of the world, and you were so stoked and they were loving you and giving you what you needed, I'd be pumped for you, So like, I don't have anybody in my life that I love where a blessing could come their way and I would want to block that or like would feel anything other than excited for them, But I think for me, it was hard to learn the communication skills necessary to do that, because I had all these archetypes I had all of these, like, I had data from all of the previous women that I had enough data to verify, at least in my head, or to like reasonably assume That if I told you I like somebody else, if I told you I went on a date, if I told you I kissed another girl, if I told you somebody else stayed the night over, that you were going to feel hurt and jealousy and possession, and that we were going to fight and that there was going to be issues. And so it was like, it took me a long time to really get to a place where and then because of all those like tropes that I lived in as like a bad man and a cheater and a liar and all these things, I was ashamed of those behaviors, even when they were in the agreement, and I was fearful. And so it took me a long time to be like, hey, I like honor all of my partners, and I show up and treat everyone with love and kindness, and I'm honest. So there's nothing wrong with me having these desires, and I can ask for these things in my relationships. And if people don't want to give them to me, then I can walk away and know that I'm still valid and that there's other people out there who will love me. But it takes a lot of time, and it starts inside, you know. We got to hold ourselves accountable before we can do anything else.
Totally. Yeah. I'm so happy we're talking about this, because this is how I really see you in life. And I love that you like weave your life and your words and your choices in this way. And, you know, just being super honest and upfront, like, yo, this is where I'm at. I could change. Like, who knows, in 5 years, who knows what I want, but like right now.
Shit, in 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Thank you. 5 days, whatever, 5 hours. Like, so this is where I'm at right now. And like, as long as you're open to continually having these conversations, because that's something like in my own relationships, especially recently, like, you know, I've been like, hey, this is like my truth right now. And then like a few days later, I'm like, you know what, like that didn't feel good. And like, now this is my truth. And they're like, well, you're inconsistent. Or like, I feel shamed for like, but I'm like, yo, I'm just like listening to my heartbeat as it beats every different. Yeah. And then we're super dynamic beings. So like, where can you feel safe enough to be like, yo, even if I am going to change, my consistency is that like, I will be consistently asking myself what my truth is. And you will continually get updated on that, you know? Yeah. Whereas like some people are just like, consistent, they pick one thing and they'll just stick with that, and they're like tunnel vision, they don't want to see the peripheral. I'm more of like a 1 point focus, but there's like stuff in the peripheral, so I'm like, oh, I'm learning from that and this, and like I'm gonna weave that in and delete that, and you know, but some people are just like tunnel vision, which is dope, but I haven't gotten there yet, or I may never get there, you know. So it's like, such a cool practice of like learning, unlearning, practicing, seeing who wants to stay in the mix as you like play and learn and unlearn and relearn things on your path, you know?
Totally. Yeah. It's funny, I was on the phone with a friend this morning, and I like identified a pattern I'm realizing because my life, like as an artist, moves in cycles where like I just did like a year, like 8 months, 6 months really of like true hibernation of creation, you know what I mean? And now I'm moving to a new phase, which is like promotion, like display, you know what I mean? It's there's like the more tender work of like sourcing all of the emotions and creating the things, and then there's like this more disciplined work of executing that like materially, making sure that everything is a finished product that exists in the world. And so like I go through these cycles. When I'm creative, I'm very tender, I'm very introspective, I'm very much living in the ideal. And when I'm touring, or when I'm rolling out albums, or when I'm in this other phase, I'm very much more like traditional masculine, very disciplined, results-based, material focused. And I just realized, I was talking to my friend, I was like, dude, I transform every year, twice a year. I it's funny because last night in the new moon, I was like journaling, and I was like calling in, like, I am strong. I'm someone who finishes things. I'm someone who follows through. I'm someone who overcomes. I'm someone who can work even when they feel bad. I'm someone who can work even when they don't get a lot of sleep. Like, and it went away from like 6 months ago. I was like, I'm someone who gives myself whatever they need. I'm someone who takes rest when they need it, you know? And I was like, dude, I'm literally transforming myself. But I noticed, as far as romance is concerned, I have a pattern. I saw it like clear as day today, and I like laughed at how long it took me to see it. But I date in cycles. When I'm in one phase, I'll meet someone who's attracted to that phase. And then in 6 months, when my album's done, I'll transform into another person. And all of a sudden, we don't really relate anymore. And then I'll fall in love with someone who's like super alpha and super like yang, you know? And then we'll like, and then at the end of that, when I like need to go back into the chamber and reflect and be tender and open it all up and do the new rebuild, we'll distance again, and I'll go through these cycles. And so I'm like going through a transformation right now, and I'm like just realizing like, oh yeah, the people you attract when you're in these different stages of your life are going to be different. And it requires so much communication to weave that in a way where we can put things down and come back when it seems right, as opposed to like having bridge burning or falling outs, or you know what I mean?
Totally.
And so yeah, that's like a new.
And even praying for someone who can like dance every kind of way you dance.
Totally.
Like that's the dream, right?
That's that's definitely the hope, is that I have someone who can match me. You know?
Right. And weave and dance as you do, even in those spaces or not spaces. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so happy you started talking about music, because that was something I really wanted to talk into this podcast. Is just, and this episode of Bathtime vibes, was just, you know, like there's so many people out there who are like, you know, I love music, I love it. I write, I record and stuff, but like to make a whole album is like a whole nother animal from my perspective.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just an onlooker, you know, and to watch you like during COVID just go like hard in the paint, like really, really working, like channeling so much energy for like this huge next expression of your soul and your voice and what you care about. And like, yo, this album is seriously fire. Like me and Lily talk about all the time. We're like, this is literally your best work ever. And like your last work was like our favorite thing ever. So like the fact that you were like pushing your own grain, you know, and like, what is that like? Like talking about going through the different phases, like it's hard to sometimes be in those emotions and to like channel these songs and to do this and like stay dedicated on that. Like, do you have like a team of people? Do you have homies you go to? Is this like a solo mesh? Is it all the above? Like, what's your process, I guess, for like that whole animal?
Certainly blessed with wonderful support. Andre Paxton, my like producer, and the guy, he's like co-song. We write all the songs together. It's just like, I've known him since I was 5. One of my best friends, super sweet guy, and just like one of the hardest working people I've ever met. I have to like pry him off. I have to be like, promise me that you'll play Mario Kart for 1 hour today. You know what I mean? Please go on a hike this weekend. You know what I mean? Like, but just super diligent, and so I get a ton of support from him. My friend Lex Leosis, she's rolling out her album right now. Her single "Won't Wait" is out right now.
Wow. Okay, we'll put that in the description.
Yeah. But just to have a friend who is also pursuing the same craft with the same level of intention and like unwavering commitment. So just like, and then my friend Chris Alfonso, who you met,
love him.
Yeah, is just one of my best friends and a huge inspiration, and just another person who's a person of discipline and follow through, and who can hold themselves accountable to long-term projects. And so just having people that you can share that energy with. But like you said, it's a huge, you know, it's like this album took me like 1.5 years, and I don't have a boss. You know what I mean? I could have quit at any point in time and no one would have held me accountable for that. And so that's the hardest thing. And that's really where the journal comes in, because the whole thing is just consistency. It's just, I had the same goal every day for 1.5 years. And a lot of people have a goal for a month or a week or 3 months or 6 months. And then if they get bored of it or they want to move on or if something else calls to them or whatever. And so I've just always had this knowing that music was my highest calling. And so when other things come around, I don't like, and that's where the journal, like I've written the words patient, consistent, confident on the top of like every page in my, like hundreds and hundreds of times, you know, probably since like August of last year, every day I've written those 3 words down. And I have this other thing where I put the header, I title and date all of my journal entries just so I can look through them.
Yeah.
And so like, when I'm working on an album, I title every page of every journal entry, whether it's relevant to the music or not, with the title of the album. So it's just like a reminder every time that I touch the journal, like this is the purpose of this whole time and all the lessons you're learning, because it's super connected to your life and your emotions and your experiences. But it's just a link that everything is happening to help you create this body of work.
Wow, that's so badass. Talk about focus and inner vision and like staying on the path, and like also way to weave it back into like the journaling that we started with, because like I see it as such a powerful practice for you and for so many people, and it's so cool to like get a glimpse behind like the sheets of like what's really getting written down, and like that alone is such a cool practice. Like if you're working on a project or if you're trying to bring something to life or manifest something, titling every page with like a few of those affirmation words and also the word of what you're calling in, whether it be like a house, a partner, this project, whatever the thing is that you're calling in.
Yeah.
Super dope, super powerful. Thank you for that practice. Yeah. Like, so when you come to actually like, so as you're like doing that, I'm sure things come, but like when you go to like actually writing and like letting this album come through you, I feel like it's probably half a process of like channeling, letting yourself be open enough and receptive enough and rested enough to like get out of your own way a bit so like things can actually come through. Do you find that there's like kind of this like me versus me sometimes when you're trying to like let things come through, or do you feel like you're pretty, now you've done it long enough where it's like, no, you know, what's the process?
Yeah, I think when it comes to writing in general, like the ego is always in the way. I was trying to write last night and I just like couldn't get out of my analytical, like thinking brain and like channel anything from above because I was so gridlocked with like me, my own voice in my head.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is like you're kind of alluding to this balance between being open and receiving and letting things channel through you. And then having intention so that everything that comes through gets channeled into something that's cohesive or that's true to what you're trying to create in the moment. And so I usually create a container. Like for this album, it's called Late Bloomer, and the concept of like the container for this album is that it follows a seed from being a seed until the moment when the flower blooms. And it was like, and the beauty in when the flower blooms is when the next seed drops, right? And so it's a cyclical process. And so everything that I channeled from the world, I just ingested through that container, and then it like allows me to live in a certain space, you know?
What a cool life. Like, what a cool like perspective of like your life and how you like really weave it all together, you know? So like, okay, so once you have like that yin part of that practice finished, you know, the album's being created, it's like been writing itself, you've been inspired, like been in those moments of that consistency and that patience and that confidence to like let it happen. Now I get to see you. I saw you bits in that phase, but I wasn't living with you then, so I didn't get to like live in it. And now I'm living with you in that second phase of like, yo, like album is done. Now it's a matter of like spreading the seed, you know? Totally. And so like from that space, it's like, you know, I'm sure a whole nother thing of like, you've overcome identity things of like, here I go again. What do I want this to look like? Like, where am I at now? Is it like is it ready enough, or do I have the right photos or videos, or, you know, like all these things. There's just so much that goes into this next wave of like, its evolution as it's about to bloom, right?
Totally. Yeah, I used to resent this part of it because I just want to make music. I don't care about like Instagram or whatever, you know? But I started to visualize it as an extension of the creation, and just understanding that the music doesn't just live in the sound waves, it lives in the presentation of it. You know, a book is not just the words on the page, it's the way that it feels in your hand, it's the image on the cover, it's the texture of the pages, it's the font, it's like all those things. And so just honoring like every extension of my creation and trying to give it the same purpose. And then as once I position it as a creative expression, then I just honor it by finishing it in the same way. Like I will not put a song out until it's done, until I feel like it's perfect and everything is exactly how I want it. And so then just applying that same perspective to the extension of that, and just being like, I'll work relentlessly at this to make sure that it is exactly that I honor my intention to the highest of my ability in that moment.
I love that. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about this album. Like, when is the first song coming out? What can we expect from you in the next few months? Like, what can we do to support you? And just give us a rundown.
Yeah.
Because I'm so excited.
I know, I'm so stoked.
It's so good.
Yeah, so the first single, Ramen, is dropping on May 21st. I don't know when this is dropping, so maybe out now.
May 21st or 31st?
21st.
May 21st, okay, yeah.
Okay.
Birthday vibes.
Yeah, exactly. And then that'll be paired with a video. I have 4 singles, so we'll be doing singles and videos through the summer, and then we'll end up with the album, hopefully in, I don't want to say a date, but when we get to it. But it's all done and it's all ready to go. It's just a matter of moving through all the content and the presentation of it. But I'm really excited. The album in general is divided into 3 chapters. So it starts with fire, and then water, and then life. And So the first single, Ramen, is from the Fire chapter. It's the first song on the album, so it's gonna like drop you into the beginning of the story. It's like the opening scene of the movie. And we shot a beautiful visual for it, and it's one of my favorite songs that I've made in recent years. It's just super fun. It's like an homage to my Bay Area roots. And yeah, and it was it was an interesting challenge to write as well, because the story follows me through time, and so I start in the past and I write up to my present, you know. And so I had to like touch old versions of me and write from those characters, and it was a challenge in being honest, because like this, I'm writing from a perspective of a person that I've grown out of being, and so there's an instinct to rewrite that character in a way that's like more flattering or suitable to my desire, but to be like true to the story, I had to paint that character accurately, and so that was a fun challenge for me. And I'm proud of myself. I think I did a good job.
So cool. Yeah. I remember one day for one of your music videos, Evan Moore and Max Cormier were around, and they like went and helped you on set, and they're just like sending me Snapchats and pictures and videos, and just like you really bring creativity to life, and I think you really do stuff like kind of in so much of your own flavor. So it's gonna be so cool to just like keep watching that creative spark within you continue to like light different fires and just like express itself in different ways, because it's just so cool, like so creative, so inspiring, so colorful, so like real, but still like lighthearted, but also deep. Like I'm like, how does he do this, you know? So I'm just excited to see.
Yeah, me too. I'm always like, and like that's an everyday excitement for me. It's like, how can I find new ways to express myself, and how can I like open up even more, you know? So it's been really wonderful. Evan and Max are so awesome. They're so helpful. There's no way I could have made that video without them. So shout out to those boys.
Yeah, love those boys. Yeah.
Love you guys.
Those young men.
Yes.
We'll hold them accountable.
Yes.
Let's hold them accountable.
Young men, yeah. Becoming wonderful men. I'm so those boys are just see, I did it again. These young men are so ahead of their time and doing such wonderful work. I'm so proud of them.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so where can people find you? I know I'll link all your stuff in the bottom, but where can people go to support you? And
it's Call Me Stevie Ray everywhere. So
Call Me Stevie, STEVIE RAY.
Exactly. So Call Me Stevie Ray on every social media, any website /Call Me Stevie Ray, callmestevieray.com. Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, wherever you stream your music, YouTube Music, Call Me Stevie Ray, I'll come right up. I'll see a picture of my pretty face.
Yeah.
And Ramen, May 21st with you.
Yeah.
And as far as like how to support, obviously what you're doing now by having, sharing your platform with me is tremendous, and gratitude. But for everyone watching, if you want to save it on Spotify or put it in a playlist or post it on your story, or if you want to dance to it on TikTok, or like skate to it, or do a backflip to it, or do a workout to it, or like whatever you feel called. But I love when people recreate, when they take the music and they create new content. It's like, I love like when fans send me like videos of them playing guitar over it or singing harmonies on it. Like when people repurpose it and make it their own expression, that's like the coolest thing in the world to me. So that would be my idea. That's my favorite thing to see.
Cool. Full permission to play.
Yes, please. Yeah, explore.
Always.
Yes, if it speaks to you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being here. And I hope that this episode just leaves you feeling just so maybe humbled and connected with yourself, and maybe you have a journal practice or you don't, but maybe you want to cop one and grab one and start this process of just finding those few words that maybe you're really calling in, or it's something that you're trying to create into real life, or even just having those deeper conversations with me. Maybe you've been thinking about going to therapy and you haven't pulled the trigger yet, and maybe this is an invitation for you to like want to try out therapy even once a month or something, just to start. Or maybe you've like been totally vibing music during quarantine and you've been learning songs, and maybe this is permission for you to start making your own music. So wherever you're at, just know that we support you and we believe in your journey. And I'm so thankful that we had you today, my amazing Renaissance man and brother, Stevie Ray.
I love you so much.
I love you too, bud. Aw, thank you.
This was wonderful. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, and then last thing, I guess this could be BTS, but I always try and end with asking, you know, for me, the bath has been like this space of like sometimes revelations or like moments of like clarity or like I'll see angels or like all kinds of stuff has happened, right? And like, as someone in your life who like you also take baths and you like to like purge, as you were saying, like what is kind of your bath time ritual, and like have you ever had a crazy experience in the tub?
Yeah, I've had many. It's funny, in October of last year there was like one of the crazy moons, I forget which one, there was a bunch of heavy moon activity last year, but one of the like there was like I had a full moon that like where I had an experience with it, and I just like set an intention. I just wrote out a list. I was like, these are all the patterns that I'm gonna rewrite. These are all the traumas that I'm gonna heal. These are things that I'm just done with in my life. And I just took everything off my calendar for 3 months, and I was like, I'm just only gonna do this. I had the means to do it, you know, and I just prioritized that. And in that 3 months, like I swear, I must have took like 20 baths a month. And I was like, almost every day I was in the bath, because it was just a place for me to think and to work, to move through stuff in my mind. But yeah, I feel like a lot of my like heaviest work, you know, like when it comes to like identifying, finding stuff inside of you and like really actively breaking it up and rewriting it. In the last year of my life, some of the like most righteous work has been in the tub.
Right?
I love it, yeah.
I'm so happy.
And I love the like piping hot, hella sweat, especially if I feel like I haven't been eating well, or if I'm trying to like do some sort of detox, like just to push stuff out through my skin is always nice.
Wow, I'm so happy I asked. That was amazing. Yes, my bath people.
Yes, bath people unite.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, thank you so much. This is fun.
Yeah, it was hella fun.
I love learning more about you and the intricacies of all that you are, and one of your biggest fans, and can't wait to see what you have in store for us next, and watching this unfold this summer and this fall is going to be super fun.
Yeah,
so
I'm really excited. Ready?
Yeah, your team is here. Much love.
Thank you.
Bye.